Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio. And now, here's our host, Dr. Vanessa Anceloni.
Welcome, dear listener, to the first show of 2012 at Kardec Radio. Here we are with the new year ahead of us and a lot of new resolutions. Have you made yours? Who hasn't? We all want to start a new year fresh and with hope in our hearts. It's all about hope. It's about new resolutions. But how can we actually achieve them? What are our resolutions? Are they only material, or are they also actually immortal resolutions? We could even talk about millennial resolutions. It's about the resolutions for lifetime, not only in one reincarnation, but immortality. And here we are with a very special show about cultural competency. And you may be asking, what does it have to do with New Year's resolution? Well, if we go to Kardec's book, The Spirits Book, we're going to get to know that the spirits in the third part of it, when Kardec asks, how can we achieve happiness? In the answer to question 614 of the Spirits Book, they answer quite clearly. To achieve happiness, we need to fulfill God's laws. What are the laws? When we read the Spirit's Book, we get to know precisely what they are. And to fulfill God's laws is the way to achieve happiness. So the new resolutions for the new year, if we really want to find happiness in a new year, we need to fulfill God's laws. And what are they? And that's why we're dedicating this whole year at the Spiritist Society of Baltimore, which you can live capture through the TV of the International Spiritist Council. Every Saturday, we're going to have a series of talks on the laws of God, according to the Spirit's Book by Allan Kardec. And when we talk about the fulfillment of the laws of God, we talk about the need of understanding that we live in society, and it's one law. If you like being isolated, you're never going to find happiness. And we need to learn to live in society and to learn that people have rights, because, the concept of justice, according to the illuminated spirits, the true justice, they say, is to respect people's rights. And this is so broad and all-encompassing that we actually are going to launch today, later after the show. Go log in at the Kardec Radio website, and we're going to see the new programs we're going to have this year, especially in January, and a new challenge that we're placing there for you. It's the challenge of what is the difference? What does it have to do with what we're talking about here? Because to fulfill God's will means to also be just, means to respect people's rights. And in one of the questions of the Spirit's Book, 876, Kardec's comment to one of the questions is that to respect people's rights is to do to others what would like actually for ourselves. And Kardec, quite interestingly, places it, desiring for others what we'd like to desire for ourselves is different from desiring for ourselves what we'd like to desire for others. Do you know the difference between them? We want to hear from you. What do you think is the difference? Click at Kardec Radio website later after the show. We're going to upload the new challenge for Kardec Radio. We're going to spend 2 months receiving from you your dissertation on it. We're going to have a committee at Kardec Radio to evaluate the dissertations that we receive. It doesn't need to be too long, but just your explanation on why Kardec said that it's different to desire for others what we would like desired for ourselves, and desiring for ourselves what we would desire for others. Talk about the difference And the winner is going to come to the show on February 25th and talk to us about the rationale behind it. And you are also going to win the first 6 basic books of Spiritism by Allan Kardec. Ooh, wow. Kardec Radio is really here to nourish your soul. And as we are talking about desiring for others what we would desire for ourselves, means to be culturally tolerant, to understand the differences and still overcome the differences, becoming ever more tolerant. What is to be culturally competent? This is a good question. And by the way, nowadays we have this concept brought in by science. The first one to define it was Mutha at the University of California, San Francisco, defining cultural competency as a set of behaviors, attitudes, and policies that enable effective communication in cross-cultural situations. And this is beyond the Spiritism. It's in our daily lives. Because we're talking about culture. We are surrounded by culture in our families. We have our family culture. We have our neighborhood culture, our city's culture, our nation's culture, our continent culture, and we also have hemispheric culture. We talk about Western society, Eastern society. How good are we to go from one cultural setting into the other, not only being understanding, but also going to higher levels of it? Did you know that science defines a true pathway of cultural learning? Because people who are truly ethnocentric, they rely on their own culture and they think that their culture is better than others. And we don't want to be ethnocentric. How many people, even in spiritist settings, they say, oh, I think Spiritism means Brazil is the only way to go. Nobody else is going to learn it but Brazilian people. This is ethnocentric, prejudiced mindset. Kardec was not like this. Kardec was so culturally competent. He had such cultural sensitivity that as an excellent educator, he opened the doors to the highest levels of cultural competency. In science, Dr. Hoops defined it as a multicultural mindset. Kardec was just like that. He was such a cultural competent person that he would not only understand the differences from different cultures, but he would integrate it in such a way that he was able to collect the teachings of the illuminated spirits and immortalize them into the basic books and the Spiritist magazine of his time. Some information that would be not only for his time, but so timeless that he's actually at the vanguard of human thought. There's still to come greater minds to deeply understand the concepts that were proposed in Kardec's books. They are day in, day out proved by science and by the progress of humanity as we evolve. And this is why we asked Divaldo Franco to come to us and explain more in this show about how Kardec was so culturally competent. Do you want to know more about who Kardec was? We're going to dedicate a whole show later this year to Kardec so you understand how fascinating he was in his mind. But for the time being, to share with you who he was, a little bit about it, just to tease you so you want to know more. Did you know that the Spirits book, in the latest version by the International Spiritist Council, we have a modern English updated form of Anna Blackwell's preface to the book. She was a British lady who was spiritualist and became a Spiritist and translated the first of the version of the Spirits book in French into English at the time. And she talks about Allan Kardec. So if you buy either the ebook format or the latest version of the Spirits book by Allan Kardec through the International Spiritist Council, either at Amazon.com or at the website of EDICEIofamerica.com, you're going to learn that Allan Kardec was the pen name of Dr. Reville, who was born in Lyon, France in October 1804. And he was from an old family of elite society, which for many generations had been honorably distinguished in the magistracy and at the bar. His father, like his grandfather, was an attorney of good standing and high character. His mother, who was remarkably beautiful, accomplished, elegant, and amiable, was the object on his part of a profound and worshipping affection that remained unchanged throughout his entire life. Allan Kardec was educated at the Institution of Pestalozzi in Yverdon, Switzerland, and he became a very, very important educator in France, especially when he moved to Paris at the time. He was quite a prodigy as a student and then became a remarkable educator. He wrote several books that changed education in France in many ways and French schools in general. Later, in his 50s, he got acquainted with the phenomenon of the turning table in Europe, and different from everybody else at his time, he didn't indulge in entertainment. On the contrary, he started studying it, the phenomena, very deeply, and understood that behind the phenomena there were very serious purposes, to the point that he understood, as the spirits told him, spirits of a much higher order than those who habitually communicate through the two young mediums have come expressly for you and will continue to do so in order to enable you to fulfill an important mission. Since then, he never stopped it. His wife, Amélie Boudet, was his very faithful companion and supported him all the way in the revolution of the bringing of Spiritism to the planet Earth. And you know, if you haven't heard about Spiritism that often, we assure you, Spiritism is spread out in the whole world and increasing to a speed that is unprecedented. At a time in which science is speaking to our hearts at the highest levels, Spiritism is also growing very much. And you're asking, how can it be possible? Because Spiritism aligns reasoning and faith like never before in this planet Earth. Every single teaching is not afraid to face reason. And when we face reason, we can bring together the combination of science and Spiritism together, as Kardec stated in the book Genesis in 1867, when in item 16 of chapter 1 he said, Spiritism and science need to go side by side. That's why we have Kardec Radio here for you to share this good news and tell you that this new year, if we really want to be happy, we need to learn how to be more culturally competent, how to go from the difference of the cultural settings. And just to wrap up Kardec's thoughts about culture, I know you are asking about it, and here we are. He asked about this very question to the spirits when he wanted to understand why groups of people look so alike, not only physically, but behaviorally speaking. They are so alike. So he asked, question 215 of the Spirit's book, where does the distinctive character that we observe in each culture come from? Dear listeners, how important is it to understand the answer to this question? When we look at people, let's say, for example, I immigrated from Brazil to the United States of America. Of course, people have different behaviors, different culture, similarities to the ones in Brazil, but different as well. if I simply become ethnocentric, stay ethnocentric, and say, Brazil is better, I like it better, Spiritism needs to be done the same way as it was in Brazil, I'm not being culturally smart, culturally competent. On the contrary, I am being very ethnocentric, prejudiced, and we're not going to go too far. So Kardec, as wise as he was, he understood that there is a reason why people have different cultures. And understanding it is going to make us more culturally competent to also bridge Spiritism to the people of different cultures, because Kardec was a master in that regard. And the Spirits answered to this question to him, 215, by saying, like humans, spirits also form families through similarities and tendencies. The purity of such tendencies depends on how evolved the spirits are. Additionally, cultures are large families where sympathetic spirits congregate, and the tendency that leads members of these families to congregate is the source of the individual likeness that exists within the distinctive character of each culture. Did you know, dear friends, the other day I was listening to somebody who got a close relationship with Chico Xavier, one of the greatest mediums of all times on planet Earth. And he actually brought in a message by a deceased young spirit who was from a Jewish family. They were not spiritists. And the father and the mother of this boy who was killed quite young came to Chico Xavier hoping that they would receive a message from their deceased son. Though they were not spiritists, they were quite impressed. We have lots of proof of the correspondence of the beyond. And Chico Xavier brought in the message as a medium from this very young man who came to his parents, explaining the beauty of how he was received in the afterlife. And he explained about, he actually brought in the Hebrew terms in which he was received in the afterlife by Jewish people who were ministers in the afterlife, and telling that he was actually truly received by the Hebrew community of the afterlife. Here we have it, as Kardec was just explaining to us in Question and Answer 215 of the Spirit's book. We also, in the afterlife, congregate in similarities of tendencies, and we cannot fight against it, dear listener. If people have their habits, we need to respect it. So in this year, to make it a happy year, we need to walk in true permanent tolerance, respecting the rights of others, which is actually the true definition of justice according to the Spirits in Question 876 of the Spirit's book. Do we want to know more about how to be culturally competent? Let us listen from this very program at Kardec Radio, in which we are truly honored to have Divaldo Franco telling us how Kardec can be a role model for us of cultural competency, and thus make this new year a very happy year. And to kickstart the show in the highest tone, we'd like to invite the spirit mentor of Divaldo Franco, Joana de Angelis, in the book and CD Living and Loving, which you can find at the bookstore of the Spiritual Society of Baltimore, www.ssbaltimore.org. The very beautiful chapter 2, Permanent Tolerance. Let us listen to it, go for a break, and when we come back, we're going to bring to you the very explanation and exclusive interview with Divaldo Franco on Kardec as the role model of cultural competency. Let's listen to it now.
Chapter 2, Permanent Tolerance.
Tolerance is a gradually weakening virtue nowadays. Although tolerance is of the utmost importance for the self and his or her relationship to humankind in general, the existing state of pragmatic ideas has been discrediting it and casting it aside. In a home without tolerance, family members are always quarreling. When tolerance is not present where business transactions are carried out, people do not trust each other. If it is absent from the social circles, it is replaced by moral discomfort and destructive competition. Sometimes people substitute acrimony, haughtiness, offense, or hypocrisy for tolerance, mistaking those attitudes for forbearance. To be tolerant to the faults of others is to acknowledge our own weakness, thrown back to us through the mistakes of others. We must understand that everybody needs a chance for self-renewal. Tolerance also dispenses with the harsh criticism that poses as friendly help. Tolerance is a feeling of brotherhood, even when it is not easily noticed. It is there, latent within everybody, everywhere, awaiting a favorable opportunity to express itself. Tolerance is calm and natural, fraternal and gentle. It springs from one's heart like limpid water that quenches one's thirst. It is generous. It forgets offense easily and tries to help the offender. Tolerance is an act of love and charity. A person's moral development is measured by the degree of tolerance he or she is able to grant to the errors and limitations of others. There is not a single person in the world who never makes mistakes. This is the reason why we need to be tolerant to one another. Tolerance pacifies the offender, helps him or her to grow spiritually, while opening up areas of sympathy for the tolerant person. Tolerance is a child of superior feelings and reveals the wisdom of reason. When Jesus was betrayed by the gross ignorance of the populace, the cunning of the Pharisees, Pilate's weakness, and the cowardly behavior of friends, he was tolerant to them all. Never had he himself needed anyone's tolerance. Jesus taught boundless love. His life was a hymn to tolerance and an opportunity of redemption to those who had fallen by the wayside. Be yourself tolerant to the faults of others, because you also need tolerance both from others and from the laws of life.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Kardec Radio, live, every Saturday at 11 a.m.
Nourish Your Soul with Kardec Radio.
Strand Releasing proudly releases on DVD the Brazilian blockbuster Astro City, A Spiritual Journey. Based on the best-selling book by medium Chico Xavier, the film tells the story of André Luiz, a successful doctor who experiences an enlightening spiritual awakening after his death. When he wakes up in the spiritual world, he embarks on a new journey of self-discovery and transformation. From his first days in a dimension of pain and suffering until when he is rescued and taken to the spiritual Astro City. With magnificent art direction and special effects that have never been seen before in a Brazilian production, and feature an amazing score by composer Philip Glass, the film brings to the screen what life is like at the Astro City that hovers in the upper layers of the Earth's atmosphere. Buy your copy now. Contact us at www.strandreleasing.com.
The newest edition of the Medium's book by Allan Kardec is now available. Purchase your copy online or via your ebook reader. Simply go to www.ediciofamerica.com today.
Nourish Your Soul with Kardec Radio.
Join us every Thursday live. Evolution in Two Worlds. A journey of the soul through the teachings of the Spirit Doctor, André Luiz. Connect at www.tvcei.com, Channel 2.
Nourish Your Soul with Kardec Radio.
enrich your spiritual senses and deepen your foundations of Spiritism with the book, What is Spiritism? By Allan Kardec. Buy your copy online or via your ebook reader. Go to www.ediceiofamerica.com today.
And now we return to our program.
Dear listener, we are starting a new year with a lot to share with us. Kardec Radio is expanding, and today we're going to have 2 new segments. As we move and expand Kardec Radio, we need more and more help. And we have new segments in the program you're going to listen after our interviews today. It's about Spiritism in your life with doctors Marco and Joyce Magalhães from Canada, and also another segment, Spiritist Moment by Kirsten DeMello. You're going to love it, and there is a lot to come ahead of us. Today we're talking about Kardec as the role model of cultural competency. As we said before, we need to be culturally competent because to be happy means, as the spirits say, to fulfill God's laws. And one of the laws is the law of equality. Equality not in the sense that we are the same, but we have the same rights. The true concept of justice, according to 876 question and answer of the Spirit's book, is all about respecting people's rights and desiring for others what we would desire for ourselves, which is different from desiring for ourselves what we would desire for others. And this is actually a challenge at Kardec Radio. Do you want to participate? What is the difference? Write your dissertation on what the difference is between desiring for others what we would desire for ourselves and desire for ourselves what we desire for others, that a Kardec Radio Committee will evaluate throughout these next 2 months. And the winner of the dissertation that is most persuasive will be announced on the show of February 25th, and will also be interviewed to talk about it. And at the end, we'll also send to the winner the first 6 books of Allan Kardec: the Spirit's Book, the Medium's Book, the Gospel According to Spiritism, Heaven and Hell, Genesis, and What is Spiritism. Learn about it, enjoy it, because this is a true challenge. Now let us talk about cultural competency and Kardec as the role model with Divaldo Franco. Who is Divaldo Franco? If you go to the website www.divaldofranco.net, you're going to learn that Divaldo Franco is actually a medium, a spiritist medium, and a renowned speaker throughout the world. And he was born in Brazil, in the state of Bahia, and he has done a lot of good things. As an educator, he opened the foundation, the Mission of the Way, in 1952 with Nilson Pereira, and nowadays they take care of more than 3,500 boys and girls on a daily basis, giving them food, education, and everything that they need for their health free of charge. And he doesn't charge a penny for his talks, for his mediumship or anything. This is true mediumship, according to Spiritism. As a speaker, he has given talks in more than 53 countries in the different continents of Europe, Americas, Africa, and Asia. And he has received different honors from titles of Doctor of Humanities, Doctor of Psychic Sciences in Canada, and many other ones throughout the United States, in Brazil, and around the world. As a medium, he has brought in more than 200 books in automatic writing, and renowned spirits such as Victor Hugo, Joana de Angelis, and many others have brought to him, through him, teachings that are unprecedented on the planet Earth. We actually brought in Divaldo Franco, though he does not speak English. We did a voiceover of his conversation with us. We're not going to stream his voice in Portuguese just for the reason that Kardec Radio is all about English-speaking Spiritism. But you're going to listen his explanation in the voiceover of our dear Steve Shepard. And here is Divaldo Franco told us he was truly honored to be with us at Kardec Radio. He's truly supportive of this work, and he said he truly believes that Kardec is the role model of cultural competency. And we asked him first question, Divaldo, we understand that culturally competency is the ability to interact effectively with people of different cultures and thoughts. In this context, could we say that Kardec was a model of cultural competency?
Considering the magnitude and extent of the Spiritist proposal, as recorded in the codification, Allan Kardec fits within the models of competence and social promotion because the content of Spiritism interfere effectively and positively in people and in the cultures of thought in all forms of presentation and experience. Eminent educator, philosopher widely linked to the positivism of Auguste Comte, serious researcher of the phenomena of life, Kardec verified the immortality of the spirit and its communication, and had no hesitation in presenting a set of principles that rivals the positivist's expression. This confirms the ancestral spiritualism and opens cultural avenues for thought at the time as well as the future. Facing the religious traditions of castrating nature and scientific prejudices then prevailing, Kardec had the courage to embrace the posture of cultural competence model, suffering persecution and unfair manifestation of hatred that had its origins in intolerance. He did so in order to promote social life with an optimistic philosophy, based on a science of conscious research and supported by the ethic morality of the gospel of Jesus, the most noble of all known. In this way, we can include Allan Kardec in history as one of the builders of a happy, cultured, and dignified society.
Dear listeners, as you heard Divaldo Franco answering to our first question, Kardec is certainly the role model of cultural competency. If you think it is difficult at this time to talk about spirituality, religion, and science altogether, at Kardec's time, it was immensely more difficult. We have no idea what it is. His courage is unprecedented. And the thing is this, he didn't get stuck in just investigating, doing research in spirit phenomena, as many wise men and women did at that time. He went beyond. He talked about the implications of the findings of his research, which is actually the true component that changes society. And if you go to every single location in this world where there is a Spiritist center, you're going to find a true social transformation happening around. No matter if it's tiny or if it's large, as in Brazil, it is truly changed. Life is not the same where there is a Spiritist flame. And in the United States, we're becoming quite successful in disseminating it, as much as in Europe and many other places. And if you think it's slow, well, slow in reference to what? To tell us the truth, 150 years of this dissemination, we're going quite advanced and quite fast, especially at a time in which science has become so powerful in dictating the understanding of the mind, the human mind. Spiritism is not defeated by it because it has a true alliance with it. Not only that, but also with religious tradition, though Spiritism is not castrating. We welcome reasoning to have an unshakable faith, as Kardec said. Think about it. How visionary Allan Kardec was. And he brought it in his day-to-day life. He brought it to revolutionize society at his time. And then today we see it spreading throughout the world. And it's proposing a true reform in our health care. Now, Divaldo. We asked also Divaldo Franco the following question. Divaldo, living in times of criticism amid clashes, almost unsolvable at Kardec's time, between science and religion, Allan Kardec presents the Gospel according to Spiritism as one of the pillars of the Spiritist science religion. In this spirit of vanguard, he proposed ideas of Christ in the basis of its universality. We included in it the growing success of Spiritism worldwide in face of the incontestable advance of science. What are then the core elements that have provided Kardec's success on the compilation and growing dissemination of Spiritism? And Divaldo answered to this question in the following way.
In its immense cultural complexity, Spiritism contextualizes the ethics of Jesus Christ at a time when the psychological doctrines need support for their therapeutics, offering the logic surrounding the human sufferings based on reincarnation, the hope of survival to the phenomena of death, and the excellent opportunity to be happy today and not only after death, as some religious doctrines accentuate. The Spiritist religion is made of joy of living, of demonstration that there is, in existence, a reason, a psychological meaning that cannot be forgotten, favoring the stimuli so the individual reaches the numinous state, according to Carl Gustav Jung, which is the fullness or the kingdom of heaven as referred to in the Gospel. Facing the Spiritist teachings, life acquires beauty, existential goals of simplicity emerge, inner renovation, opening space for a harmonious existence. Of course, it does not preclude the presence of suffering, which is a part of the anthropological process of evolution, but Spiritism clarifies its causes and helps us to eliminate the factors of disturbance. For these and other reasons, Spiritism has found easy public acceptance in all cultural segments of society today. Furthermore, Spiritism accepts all conquests achieved by science, which confirms the Spiritist postulates, penetrating its causes, while the same remains in the analysis and study of its effects.
Divaldo, that's so interesting. And the most important part of it is that you suggest to us that the universality of the teachings of Spiritism is the main component that can be brought to all cultural segments of society today and in the future. Dear listener, in the Gospel According to Spiritism, Kardec opens the introduction by talking about the universality of the teachings of Spiritism. And he says these teachings were going to be brought from pole to pole without restriction of nationality. So we don't dare to say. I remember once in an interview, somebody asking us whether or not the Brazilian people were the ones disseminating Spiritism. And we don't agree with it because Spiritism was brought through, first, the French soil. Kardec was reincarnated in French. And the French men and women at the time were the ones that were instruments of the first steps of the teachings of Spiritism. Later, Brazil came about as, and still is, a country in which Spiritism is widespread, and Brazilians like ourselves are all over the world sharing these teachings. But not only Brazilians and not only French people. There are amazing people. Talk about Anna Blackwell, for example, the British lady who first translated the French version into the English version of the Spirit's book and the Medium's book. Without her works, we wouldn't be here. And by the way, Janet Duncan, the British pioneer in the United Kingdom in the 20th century, she was the one that brought Spiritism to life in its first steps in England. And we have people from all different nations who are being pioneers, like talk about Amalia Domingo Solares in Spain, Miguel Vives as well. We have here Hispanic friends who actually in other times they were opening the doors of Spiritism also in the United States. So we cannot be encapsulated in ethnocentric mindset in this year to come and isolate ourselves from being culturally competent. We need to get out of the ghetto of our, and forgive me, I don't want to be prejudiced by saying ghetto, it's just in the sense of cultural setting, to be encapsulated in our little culture and despising the cultures of others. We need to be all embracing, as Kardec was, multicultural, successfully and competently achieving the universality of these teachings to the hearts of people in different nations of different cultures as is. We're going to give a short break and come back with the last question that we asked Divaldo Franco about Allan Kardec being the role model of cultural competency for us. And when we come back, you can also call in Kardec Radio, because we are live, 858-769-4705, and talk to us. Ask your question from wherever you are, or send your question to the chat at blogtalkradio.com/Kardec Radio to ask a question so we can talk to you and let us, clarify things that maybe are not clear. And then after Divaldo Franco, we're going to be honored to ask a few questions in a special interview that is going to happen live directly from Montreal, Canada, with Alexis Sestini and Robert Lavoyer, who are in the Spiritist movement of Montreal, Canada, doing a big difference there, and are going to share with us interesting thoughts about this idea of being culturally sensitive and opening new venues of disseminating Spiritism wherever we are. We'll be right back with you.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Strand Releasing proudly releases on DVD the Brazilian blockbuster Astro City, A Spiritual Journey. Based on the best-selling book by medium Chico Xavier, the film tells the story of André Luiz, a successful doctor who experiences an enlightening spiritual awakening after his death. Buy your copy now. Contact us at www.strandreleasing.com.
Nourish Your Soul with Kardec Radio.
Now in English, the book Action and Reaction by the Spirit André Luiz, psychographed by Chico Xavier. Buy your copy online or via your ebook reader. Go to www.ediceiofamerica.com today.
And now we return to our program.
Dear listener, we are talking about being culturally competent. Have you thought about it before? Well, we asked Divaldo Franco to explain more about this concept. When we talk about cultural competency, we're talking about not being ethnocentric. Nowadays, even professionally, all the industry, from educational to business industry, they want employees who are culturally competent. People who understand that we actually need to have a set of behaviors, attitudes, and policies that enable effective communication in cross-cultural situations. We need to be understanding, considering, and devising, and get rid of the ethnocentricity when we think that our culture is the best of everybody else. And this is not good. So to be multicultural, as Kardec was, and so successful in his approach, we also need to acquire this understanding of being culturally humble. Quite recently, in the year of 2011, we asked this very question to Divaldo Franco. The last question we asked him was about the fact that in 2011, two scientists named Dr. Melanie Tervalon and Jean-Marie Garcia, they defined the concept of cultural humility as part of being culturally competent. And they say it is a permanent process of self-reflection and self-criticism before cultural differences. Then Divaldo, Kardec demonstrates having had great cultural humility, facing the scientific and religious differences of thought at his time. How can we then exercise such elements in the making of the Spiritist work? Could we talk about cultural adjustment as occurred with the Spiritist movement in Brazil? And Divaldo answering this question in the following way.
The more the individual progresses and matures psychologically, the more he realizes the much he needs to conquer in order to harmonize himself. The individual's knowledge undresses him, favoring him with the exact measure of the impermanence of the physical body and the continuity of the self that he is. Inevitably, as a consequence, the individual becomes humble, as it happens to Socrates, allowing him to experience the teaching absorbed in Delphi. Know thyself. Allan Kardec got this discernment, realizing that the pride and vanity represent cultural immaturity, psychological inferiority, tangled by intimate conflicts in the individual. Rather than dwelling on useless philosophical argumentation, Kardec always proposed the action of charity in its deepest sense for self-realization, self-reflection, self-criticism, and inner encounter. Each country has, however, their own idiosyncrasies, and therefore Spiritism offers elements of cultural adjustments to each one of these archaic archetypal heritages, without losing its universal content. Some countries, like Brazil in particular, can offer a positive contribution, examples of success which will naturally be applied in accordance with the historical and technological processes, economic and sociological dynamics of each country. Religious and cultural differences between various nations are unable to prevent the advance of Spiritism, because its postulates have answers to the unknown that still live in the doctrines of human mind. Charity, for example, is above any kind of religious, cultural, scientific reaction, because it is the highest manifestation of love in its essential psychological meaning.
And dear listener, when he talks about charity here, Divaldo Franco is not talking about beneficence per se, philanthropy alone. He's talking about the true concept of that Spiritism brings in the Spirit's book, which is charity as benevolence towards everyone, also being indulgent with the imperfections of others, and forgiving the offenses of others. Because in the Spirit's book, when we talk about charity, in the law of justice, love, and charity and love, in the Spirit's book, the Spirits explain quite clearly there is a difference between almsgiving and being charitable. Being charitable is when you give, for example, soup. It's not about giving the soup, but the love that you put in there, the smile that you give, the caring that we place. Giving money alone is not charity. It's simply philanthropy, which is good, but does not do it all. And Kardec is saying here that charity is the element that is going to conquer the hearts of everyone. And it's not this cold, prideful type of philanthropy we're talking about. We're talking about showing how much we care. Because, by the way, Spiritist centers are charitable, non-profit organizations. Many people tell us, oh, Spirit Sort of Baltimore, what kind of charity work do we do? Well, we go see homeless. We also give them food. But this is not the major part of what we do. What we do actually, as much as many other centers throughout the United States and everywhere and elsewhere in the world, is about offering these teachings free of charge, giving passes free of charge, doing mediumistic work free of charge. This is charity, my friends. The joy that we have in our hearts to serve people in the Spiritist Center is through charity. This is charity. As much as giving food and clothes to people who are in need. We need food, spiritual food, and spiritual clothes to also people who are in need, those who are distraught in their hearts and need consolation in their minds as well. So these are Divaldo Franco's answers. And you know what? This is so good that as the editor-in-chief of the Spiritist magazine of the International Spiritist Council, we decided to publish this whole interview in the next issue of the Spiritist magazine. And if you're a subscriber or you are listening to this and you want to know what's happening to the Spiritist magazine, they are just in Brazil in the headquarters of the International Spiritist Council. Throughout the last semester, they have been rearranging the team that is doing the art and design of the Spiritist magazine. Right now, we have 3 issues that are about to be published, but we're still hiring an art and design person. So if you know anybody, especially in Brasilia, but not restricted to Brasilia, Brazil, who is a good art and design person, please email us at info@spiritistmagazine.com. And we're going to forward this message to Dr. Cesar Perry de Carvalho, who is actually the administrative person in charge of putting together the team for the Spiritist magazine. As the editor-in-chief, I cannot do much more than wait the hiring of the new person. So, but if you know somebody, please let us know, because we have 3 beautiful issues that need to be published digitally at the spiritistmagazine.com website and are awaiting a new person to be hired and fulfill this task. Well, Kardec Radio is here to tell us how we need to be culturally competent. And to be culturally competent, we need to see people like Allan Kardec as one of the role models in this earth, to talk more about how we can do exactly what Divaldo Franco said, adapting to our local reality. We're going to call here, after this last break, the presence of Alexis Sestini and Robert Lavoyer from the Spiritist movement in Montreal, Canada, to talk to us about how interestingly they have been working with their teams in their area to successfully disseminate Spiritism. We'll be right back with you after this break.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Strand Releasing proudly releases on DVD the Brazilian blockbuster Astro City, A Spiritual Journey. Based on the best-selling book by medium Chico Xavier, the film tells the story of André Luiz, a successful doctor who experiences an enlightening spiritual awakening after his death. Buy your copy now. Contact us at www.strandreleasing.com.
Nourish Your Soul with Kardec Radio.
Now in English, the book Action and Reaction by the Spirit André Luiz, psychographed by Chico Xavier. Buy your copy online or via your ebook reader. Go to www.ediceiofamerica.com today.
And now we return to our program.
Dear listener, we are here talking about the resolutions of the new year, to be ever more tolerant to one another and understand the cultural differences of the different places where we live in, and especially talking about how to successfully bridge Spiritism into different cultural settings. And Kardec has become the role model. Divaldo Franco is actually a role model in that regard as well. His whole life, we talk about it. He's quite universal everywhere and elsewhere he goes. And to exemplify a little bit more on how we can expand this awareness of being culturally sensitive, we brought in here 2 friends from Montreal, Canada, Alexis Sestini and Roberto Lavoyer. They are here with us. And hi, Alexis and Roberto. We're so honored to have you here with us at Kardec Radio. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Vanessa. This is Alexis. Thank you for the invitation. I'm here with Roberto Lavoyer.
Hello, Vanessa. Thank you.
Hi, Roberto, and hi, Alexis. Thank you so much. So can you share with it a bit of our listeners about how is the Spiritist movement in Montreal, Canada?
Well, we have here 3 spiritist centers. In this, we have more or less, let's say we're talking about these 60, 70, 80 people in our spiritist center here per week. Have different meetings for studies, weekly for mediumship, and everything that I would say we would find in Brazil, except of course that the meetings are in 2 languages here.
Oh, really? What languages are they?
They are mainly in Portuguese or French. So due to the main language here in Montreal being French, the first language.
Mm-hmm. And when you talk about the need of, for example, speaking in French in Canada because of the local community, what could you say about the greatest observations of progress throughout the dissemination of Spiritism in Montreal?
Oh, we have had many steps here in the progress of the dissemination of the Spiritism here, because we have had, for example, 40 years ago, a group of local people here, what we call Québécois in French,
mm-hmm.
or Quebec, they formed a group here to start studying the Spiritism. There was a while ago. But after that, let's say Brazilians start to arrive also and also try to contribute, because as we spoke here, nowadays the Brazilians are in big number for the Spiritism in Brazil, and they travel and they want to continue studying the Spiritism somewhere. And there comes the challenge to not only that we meet here to study the Spiritism, but also to disseminate in the local place wherever you are.
Mm-hmm.
So the advancements we have had, besides grow and steadily and have a compromised Spiritist center here with their own activities, we would say the foundation of the Canadian Spiritist Council, for example, that was recently, we could mention that in the history of the Spiritism here in the end of 2008, where the idea is to unify the Spiritism and put these Spiritist centers together all over Canada. And but in Montreal, we have had quite a few steps here in integrating the local people in the activities more and more, and we are learning a lot with that as well.
That's because sometimes the question from someone that never heard about Spiritism will be a very basic, and we have had a lot of thinking and studying, because sometimes we couldn't answer the question. So for us ourselves, we learn a lot, and in different ways, because let's say a person with no background with Spiritism, who doesn't even know what the Spiritism is, so you have to start from scratch. And that's not the case in Brazil, so people have some idea about that, but here is from scratch. And happily, we have a lot of books in French from Allan Kardec, Leon Denis, and others, so we can study and show the books, and luckily too, French from 1860 hasn't changed much to the present day.
Mm-hmm.
So way, it's a good way. But sometimes, yes, there is certain old words that doesn't mean the same thing today than it was in 1856 or 1860s. So for this, we have always to explain and put in the perspective. But basically, our experience says if you explain the ideas, they like it. And pass the words that sometimes is very negative sometimes because it's let's say the doctrine. We have sometimes it can be, oh, what is doctrine? It looks very negative sometimes because of what people used to do in this world. But we have to step back and say, look, in this time it was, or we have to explain each time. So that lead us to study a lot more than we thought about.
So Roberto, what you're mentioning there, you're talking about some barriers that you identified culturally speaking. So let's go back to that issue, for example. And I remember talking about this a while ago with Jim Pursley at the Spirit Society of Baltimore, with Dr. Emma Bragdon, and many others. They say, Vanessa, this word doctrine, it doesn't work for us. If you go to England, it's the same problem. If you go to Canada, Montreal, as you're saying, it's the same problem. But, so you're talking about being culturally sensitive. And you're saying, for example, the reasons why people have a resistance. If you go to the American dictionary, the Merriam-Webster, and bring the definition of doctrine, it's going to say it's a dogma created by the church. So people here in the United States, when they also hear the word doctrine, they don't understand it as we do in Brazil, because there is a cultural background, a historical background that, creates a barrier. So if we keep using the word and do not adapt it, we're not going to conquer many hearts, right?
Exactly. And the thing is that, like we were talking, when we start talking about spiritism, maybe sounds so simple because we come from years of studying the spiritism and everything, and then it's basic. So, for example, another day we had a meeting in our spiritist center just to agree on what we should say if somebody local here come and ask, okay, what do you guys do there? in this space. So what you should tell them? Because if we start like this, it's simple. Just say spiritism is a doctrine that, doesn't work. That's something that we have to take care of. Like Roberto explained, that could sound something different. Other words like I heard here, charity. I even took note of that because even that is so basic. And even charity, I was happy that you took some time to explain to the audience, because this is something that could be also controversial. Although the basic of charity is to give something of you to others, and that's, I think, what Jesus wanted to say, that we should give of ourselves and help each other, right? And love in the sense of love God and love your next.
And let me talk about it, Alexis, as you talked about the subject of charity and philanthropy. Many people, because in Brazil, Spiritism successfully spread out in this social transformation by doing what the government doesn't do much there, which is taking care of at-risk children, unprivileged people. Spiritist centers took over, and they are the most charitable people in Brazil in regard to philanthropy. But many people, when they go to other countries, let's talk about Canada, the United States, in our countries, the government does a great job, and there are several organizations taking care of homeless, children, etc. And if we simply want to do the same, we are not doing much. And that's why Divaldo Franco, I remember Daniel Santos and I in 2007, December 2007, we were visiting Divaldo Franco at the Mission of the Way. And we talked to Divaldo Franco about the fact that we have some outreach programs at the Spirit Society of Baltimore, but it's not at the extent of many Spiritist centers in Brazil, for example. And we were talking about it with Divaldo Franco. And we said, what do we do? Do we need to do more? And he quite clearly said, guys, in the place where you are, you need to enlighten the place first, because there is darkness. You need to disseminate the teachings first. Later, other people will come and will be able to do other things. We cannot do it at first. And if you go back to the Spiritist movement in Brazil, for example, even at Kardec's time, we don't hear people doing these outreach programs at the extent that they do today. And there is true difference. And many people do it more out of pride, thinking that they need needy people to feel good about themselves, than really out of true charity, as you're saying, right? So that's another cultural aspect that we need to address here, as you're mentioning, right, Alexis?
Exactly, and there are, this is one of them, because in fact we arrive here and say, okay, let's do like we do there, and let's go to some place for charity, and then you get to a hospital or something. I can come as a group, and no, we have to come one by one. We have to go for an interview. There's a lot of difference on that, and also another different aspect is the way they receive, and I'm going to learn about the Spiritists, because, for example, we had in our meeting here, this meeting we have today at the same time of the program, 45 minutes of the Spiritist book and 45 minutes of the Gospel according to the Spiritists. That was our initial way of doing the format for the meeting. And then at the end of 1 year, I asked them, guys, are you comfortable with this format? Do you have any suggestions? So a local person here, she said, why we have to study the gospel so long? Couldn't we study more the Spiritist book? And then maybe we could study only the Spiritist book in this meeting. Why not? Then I said, well, this is something, again, that's very basic. When you come from a Christian country, and then that is so common, so different religions based on Christ, like Brazil, and maybe 90, more than 90% are Christian religions there. And then we get here that was also like that, like 50 years ago, but then things changed, and then there is a issue on that, and then we have to understand that the local needs and history of the place we are going, because that would make all difference. So from that point, we didn't want to give up the gospel, but we did like 15 minutes the gospel just to talk about that and create some reflection on that, and 1 hour and 15 minutes in the books of spirits, because then we are going to discuss more philosophically and scientifically level, because like you said, we cannot arrive and impose our way of studying the spirits, because the history and the culture is different. So maybe there is a more scientific and philosophical approach that would fit better to the place we're going.
And you lead to the cause, and Spiritist leads to spiritual better yourself. So at the end, you will be the same. I think going this way, I think it's a way to go to the same point, but we cannot just start and read the gospel and then, because the rejection in Quebec, in French Canada, it's special because of the history here. And so we have to take a little more care than, per se, let's say in Toronto or the rest of Canada, where there was not a Catholic church, it was the main church. So that's why we have to be a little more careful, but spiritism is spiritism, so we have to explain, but we have to, let's say, go in other ways to go to the same point. But at the end, the spiritism will, the causes, just studying spiritism will be the cause, the effect will be to studying the gospel too.
Exactly. And you guys brought in a great point, another point of cultural sensitivity as well. the religious aspect of Spiritism, because we talk about the philosophical, the scientific, and the religious. It's truly founded in Jesus as the guide and model. But as we said in the last program, the Spiritist view of Jesus is non-sectarian. And being non-sectarian, we're not here, as you said, to impose and say, you guys, if you want to be spirit, you must love Jesus no matter what. And then what is the difference between us and what we've done in previous lives when we were fundamentalists and repeating the same mistakes? And we forget that there are people who are out there. If they don't like Jesus, I'll give an example. Everybody knows that spiritualists in the United States, majority of them don't want to talk about Jesus. Because the Jesus they understand is the Jesus that was imposed to them by the churches, especially by the Protestant church in the United States. I remember when the spiritualists were, the history tells that they were so much persecuted by the Protestant Christians of the time, that they have an aversion for Jesus. And think about it: your life being destroyed, your family members being fired by their jobs because people who say they love Jesus, they are not tolerant and they are not caring, and they don't want you to talk to spirits. So how are you going to love this Jesus that they presented to you? And if they come to spiritist centers and they want to hear about it, and you just say, Jesus is Jesus, you must love him no matter what, we're repeating the same mistake. Not that we're not going to talk about Jesus, but the way we're going to talk about. I'll give an example. At the Spirit Side of Baltimore in Virginia, we decided to give the mini talks on the passages of the book Jesus at Home. There are people who come to our centers who are Jewish, who are of Hindu traditions, or no religion whatsoever. When they hear those stories, they love them because they're truly universal. And we're not saying, oh, Jesus is your Savior, either you like it or else. So the way we talk is different. Alexis and Roberto, we just want to clarify. What we're saying here is not that we're not going to talk about it, but the way we're talking about it, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yes, I think we have to. I think the Spiritism, one of the, let's say, the missions of the Spiritism itself, one of the top importance is to clarify and extract the teachings from Jesus that are universal, and they touch all the cultures, they touch all the human beings, and not to be attached on things that originated some uses of this or that religion, but the moral teachings, what you call the moral teachings, but that are ethical, they are just universal, and those things, they are important for every human being. So we have somehow to try our best to clarify to those that has this point of view that Jesus is associated with some type of repression or something. That Jesus was not, he didn't found any church himself. He lived his life, he gave teachings, and mainly he gave an example of the way of living, caring about other people. And Jesus himself, there is a parable that he teaches that there was a man that was in trouble. He was robber. He was attacked by people, and he was left on the road, and he was hurt. And then Jesus himself, he puts this question, like there was a guy that was accepted by the religion of the time, what they called, I think was a Pharisee or something. But the fact is that he wanted to put a guy that was very accepted by the religion of the time, and he passed away. He passed, And he went away, and he didn't help the guy. There was another guy, that the Samaritan, that was just jumping to the end of the story. He was not accepted. He was the guy that, let's say nowadays, this guy doesn't believe in God. This guy, like, is it the guy that is not? There's no religion, like there's nothing. And this guy helped him. Helped the guy who was there on the road. And then he makes the question, which one was the next for this one that was there needing help? Then everybody, the answer, the one that helped. So Jesus himself, he made this distinction very clear. So what's important is the action, what you do to the others, more than what you believe, because that can be personal, that each one has its own way to go to God. When you go to a place that's very close by, you don't have so many ways, but when you go to God, that's much, let's say, farther and so close at the same time. But we have many steps to learn and to perfection ourselves. Then you have different ways, and this is personal. The relation between the human being and God is something personal that has to be respected, and each one will choose the way to study and to wonder and to philosophy about that. We have to respect that.
That's a good point, Alexis. And by the way, Debbie Caron from Connecticut, she sent us a question and a comment here that I'm going to share with our people. It's beautiful because she says, one of the ways of teaching about the gospel according to Spiritism is by also aligning it with current events and teachings of other lines of thought that intersect, and making people, understand it more according to the culture. It's again about the adaptation, and we do that as well in the Spirit Side of Virginia, Spirit Side of Baltimore, and which is talking about the teachings that are so universal that were brought by Jesus and now are being talked about by different lines of thought. So thank you, Debbie, for making this comment to us, which is truly, truly helpful. And thank you also, Murillo Soranzo, who just wrote to us in the chat saying that he's so happy with the content of this show today. And he says, I have for a long time thought that the word doctrine is not a good translation for Spiritism, and now I have started using Spiritist faith. The other is the difference between how charity is practiced in the other countries. Perfect. Thank you, Murillo, also for sharing your thoughts with us. And, Alexis and Roberto, we cannot thank you enough for bringing about these very critical elements and sharing your experience there. And thank you so much for being here. And in these final moments, would you like to share your final thoughts with the listeners at Kardec Radio?
Well, I would say based on all that we thought about and we talked here, that don't need to worry about how you'll be seen or that you need to choose one path to God, because the relation to God is you and Him, and go for it. Build your own path to God, but do something about it. Just doesn't ignore, because there is that's a fact that we have to search for in our life that could enlighten a lot of our way in life. And I would say, yes, go for it, but consider that you are one person different than others, and you find your own path for that.
All right, Alexis. Roberto, would you like to say your final words before?
So to everyone, to be open-minded and listen to people, and that's what we're trying to do here, to listen, then to re-examine our ways all the time, to grow and study a lot, because Spiritism it's a study, it's a science, it's a philosophy, it's a religion. So we have to study a lot to grow and listen to the others, and that's charity too. Well, like we said. So listen, and when people say something, and don't go overboard and say, he doesn't like, let's say, what we are saying, Jesus or whatever. But listen, and at the end, people like the principles. The principles are universal, and we have to be patient. We have to learn how to say it, how to talk, to be cultural and competent. That's how we think.
All right. Alexis and Roberto, please receive a big hug of gratitude from all of us. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, your experience, and we hope to have you here back in this year, 2012. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Vanessa, for the invitation, and thanks everybody, and Happy New Year. Happy 2012 for everybody.
All right, thank you. Thank you. You see, dear listener, Spiritism is spreading out. Of course, we have our limitations. It couldn't be any different. We're not perfect. We're not looking for perfection, but progress. And this is the way we can build safe resolutions and reliable one and easy to follow through for the new year. Build resolutions that are for immortality. We'll never go wrong. It's beyond buying a car or a house or this. These are just second nature. We're talking about millennial goals, goals of being more tolerant, more understanding, and especially more culturally sensitive to become multicultural as Allan Kardec was. So, dear listener, as we got to the end of our show, we're going to give a new gift to you. Two beautiful segments that were put together, Spiritist Moment by Kirsten DeMallo and Spiritism in Your Life by Doctors Marco and Joyce Magalhães from Toronto, Canada. Enjoy them, learn with them, and we'll see you next week. When we come back next week, we have a whole show with Dr. Sidney Greenfield, the author of the book Spirits with a Scalpel, Healing and Spirits with a Scalpel. Enjoy it. We'll see you next week. May God bless us all.
Hello, dear Kardec Radio listeners. I am Kirsten DeMello with the Spiritist Moment. Before we get into talking about what is a Spiritist Moment, we'd like to take this opportunity to thank the Kardec Radio team of collaborators and the producers, especially to the founder and Kardec Radio host, Dr. Vanessa Anzalone, for granting us this opportunity to share with you, dear listeners, the consoling messages that Spiritism brings for us in our day-to-day lives. So what is the Spiritist Moment, you may be asking at this point? Well, basically, it is a 10 to 15-minute segment where we will be covering a vast array of different subjects. Anything from friendships, loss of a loved one, love in our lives, or pain and afflictions, mediumship, reincarnation, life after life, and many other different topics. And perhaps even in the future, dear listeners, you can email us at kardecradio.com and share with us some topics you may want us to discuss about and share with you, all from the Spiritist perspective based on the codification by Allan Kardec, as well as the vast array of different Spiritist literature that exists out there today, because there's many adjunct literature now that have been translated into English and in Portuguese and many other languages that are available for us online and in many bookstores throughout the world today. So, dear friends, as we venture into this 2012, this new year, special year surrounding 2012, with all the predictions, we like to say with Spiritism and here at Spiritist Moment, let us reflect with this new year and take this opportunity to think about the important things, our purpose, our goal, our mission in life. Let's reflect even further with Joana de Angelis, the spirit guide of the Brazilian Spiritist medium Givaldo Pereira Franco, in her book, Happy Life. And she says in that book that we are always an example for someone, and that we influence others around us. So in this new year, let us try to be more aware of how we are acting, knowing that someone is watching us always, how we act, and we are an example for someone in our lives. So be a good spiritist, be a good person, be a good example for someone you don't even know who's watching you. In this new year, let's try and be the best you, the best I, the best we that we can be in this new year. And reflecting in this new year of 2012, how commonplace it is for most of us to make a resolution, make many resolutions. And in these resolutions, oftentimes we ask for simply good health and wealth, which is very common, especially wealth. Seeking in this New Year's resolution to perhaps find a better paying job, everything that is material and nothing oftentimes, or not enough, that is spiritual. It's so commonplace also to wish others good health and wealth. And why not wish them good spiritual virtues, moral courage in this new year? And we reflect with the message from the book Jesus in the Home that is psychographed by the Brazilian spiritist medium Francisco Cândido Xavier by the spirit Neo Lucio. There is a message that's entitled The Industrious Man, and really it talks about a man who spends 20 years of his life seeking riches, not just for himself but for his family. So, and it says there in the book that he is a noble, uprighteous man. But even with being noble and uprighteous and being devoted to being uprighteous, he still was in this idea that having material wealth would bring happiness to his family. And after 20 years of reflection, what does he find out? That he is miserable. That his wife is more concerned with mundane things. His children preoccupy their time with discussing how much inheritance money they would get. His servants speak ill of him behind his back, and to his face they smile. His neighbors don't really like him, and he looked around his life and saw that a lot of people just either were jealous of him or were after him simply because of his money. In many reflections and crying out to God, finally an angel appeared to him, and to rephrase what the angel said, because you can go and read the message for yourself, she basically says, why did you ask for so much when you truly only require so little to be happy? And what happens? With that, he reflects further and realizes that all of these wealth and riches are what's causing him this anguish. So he decides to share his wealth with his neighbors. And that brings him so much joy and happiness enters his heart again. And the interesting thing is that those around him begin to really not like him even more because he was giving away his riches. More importantly, his wife looked at him like he was crazy. His children began to hate him. Everyone else just thought he was crazy. So how often do we try to better ourselves in our lives and we encounter that the people closest to us don't like that we're changing? And perhaps, dear listeners, you're going to find that in this New Year resolution that you set for yourself, that's a positive one, that you want to do better, you want to fight that addiction, and perhaps those around you who have those heavy addictions don't want you to change either. Whether they're addiction of just being addicted to negative behaviors, not just different substances that exist that are bad for our physical bodies, but also negative thoughts. Perhaps we're gossiping too much, and then we begin to stop gossiping as much, and perhaps people around us don't like that we're stopping this kind of behavior, because who else are they going to talk to but you, who they've always come to? So, dear friends, as in the Gospel according to Spiritism, when the good and noble spiritists who communicate there, and the good noble spirits who bring us messages, along with Allan Kardec, that tell us to have moral courage, especially in this new year. Many transitions are going on for a lot of us in this globe, and we here at the Spiritist Moment seek to address those many issues that we all have in our day-to-day lives from the Spiritist perspective. Why? Because it is such a consoling doctrine, such a consoling teachings for us to soothe our aching heart and souls, because we know that we are still transitioning into a world of regeneration from a world of trials and tribulations, as described to us in the codification by Allan Kardec. So, dear friends, we here at the Spiritist Moment urge you in this new year to reflect more on a daily basis, and don't be like this industrious rich man who waited 20 years to reflect on his life. Let's not be like that. Let's take the advice from Joanna de Angelis in various books that she wrote through the Brazilian Spiritist medium, Divaldo Pereira Franco, where she urges us daily to reflect on our day. She urges us to reflect on our thoughts, on our actions throughout the day, and to see, are they in line with the Spiritist teachings? Are they in line with the good and noble teachings, and also with our own consciences? Because we know that the laws of God are written in our conscience. So our conscience will speak volumes to us if we simply learn to listen, to meditate, to think a little bit more within ourselves about how we are acting, and especially with our thoughts, because oftentimes we are creatures of habit. We tend to do the same thing over and over again over many lifetimes. So you can imagine how difficult it is to break these negative habits we have. So Joanna Jones again says that the more we work on ourselves, the more we see that it's quite difficult and hard, and then we have more compassion for others in our lives, because we realize that to change is a tedious and arduous task and laborious, but it is one that we gain so much from in our lives, because we can truly find inner peace inside of ourselves. So, dear friends, as you enter and embark upon new adventures, new journeys, and a new pathway of life for yourself in this new 2012, reflect some more on more positive literature. Think about what you're feeding yourself, not just in the physical form, but also in the spiritual form. What kind of spiritual food are you feeding yourself? And we thank you so much here at the Spiritist Moment for allowing us to speak with you, to share our reflections, all from the Spiritist perspective based on the literature. We thank you, and if you ever have any questions, please feel free to email us at kardec@kardecradio.com, through the Kardec Radio website. We would love to hear your comments or questions, or perhaps even topics you would like for us here at the Spiritist Moment to cover. We surely will, friends, all based upon the Spiritist literature and adjunct literature with Allan Kardec. And as we ring in this new year of 2012, we wish you not only many blessings, but moral courage to endure the trials and tribulations that will ultimately better shape you in the end. So let's not run away from all our hardships. Let us resign ourselves to be obedient, knowing that God's design for our life is so wise, and He is wiser above us all, and seek through prayer more strength, and also going to our Spiritist centers and reading more literature. We thank you, dear friends, for this opportunity here at the Spiritist Moment, and once again at Kardec Radio. We wish you many blessings in 2012. I am Kirsten DeMello with the Spiritist Moment.
Yeah, dear listener, here we have it, a new segment at Kardec Radio, Spiritist Moment with Kirsten DeMello. And now we're going to broadcast to you another new segment, Spiritism in Your Life, with Doctors Marco and Joyce Magalhães. Listen to it and enjoy.
Hello everyone, my name is Marco Magalhães, the host of the new show called Spiritism in Our Lives, and we're going to be here every week, both me and Joyce Magalhães, bringing you new topics on science in relation to yourself, to your life, and bringing all together with the teachings of Kardec and Spiritism. We do appreciate all your comments and suggestions, and we ask you to go online to www.kardecradio.com and leave your comments so we can build this show together, making it a good experience for both of us and for all the spiritual friends that are listening to this show also. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy the show. Let us now listen to our inspirational message.
not lose it. Do not lose hope. There are millions of people who would relish having the resources that are now at your disposal. Do not lose your sense of humor. Aggravation will take away from your life by depleting inner strength. Do not lose your tolerance. Your imperfections are continuously being tolerated by others. Do not lose your serenity. The problem may not be as difficult as you think. Do not lose your modesty. The mountain is above the plain, but beyond the mountain there is an infinite horizon. Do not lose your desire to learn. Death itself is a lesson. Do not lose the opportunity to help. Sooner or later, you will need the assistance of others. Do not lose time. New days will come, but each moment is only lived once. Do not lose your patience. Think of everlasting patience of the Creator. This is a message of the Spirit André Luiz by Chico Xavier.
Dear Kardec Radio listeners, our show today is going to talk about hope. And this is what we're going to propose to you. We're going to bring you scientific evidence about different topics in relation to Spiritism. And today we're going to spend the next 10 minutes discussing about hope and how does that affect us? How does having hope alone can change ourselves, can allow us to act differently, to react differently to the situations. According to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, hope is to cherish a desire with anticipation, or to desire with expectation of obtainment, or to expect with confidence. These are very good definitions of hope. But considering our daily lives, and especially this time that we're just starting a new year, how can we use this hope that we're feeling now and transform it into what we want really to happen? How can we materialize everything that we hope for? And this is one of the most important things that we have to discuss today, especially when we're starting a new year. Everyone hopes for something, hope for change. But how can we change? How can we move another step along and actually transform all this nice feeling of hope into action? And this is one of the things we're going to discuss in this program today. There is growing scientific evidence that hope is correlated with less anxiety and less signs of depression in patients undergoing treatment for different diseases, including cancer. There is also significant evidence that hope can actually increase the ability of the patient to cope with the treatment, and in the end, this patient is going to show better results to therapy and better outcomes, including outcomes related to quality of life. But we as spiritists, we know that there's more to hope than just that. Imagine that we now, as we described in the beginning, hope as this positive thinking that something's going to happen. Consider that our thoughts are actually materializing around us. If we really hope for something, well, we're contributing right there. We're starting the first step for that specific thing to happen. And this is why it's so important during this time of year specifically that we focus on things that we need to change. But again, that's only the first step. So now, what we need to do next? So the most important thing we need to do is not only hope, but actually start doing something. So what are we going to do for that thing that we're waiting and hoping to happen to actually happen? Hoping alone is not going to change too much. It's the starting point. It's the trigger. So it is indeed going to trigger us to do something. But we have to move. We have to actually act. As we can find on chapter 25 of the Gospel according to Spiritism, seek and you shall find is analogous to help yourself and heaven will help you. It is the principle of the law of labor and consequently the law of progress. So in order for us to achieve what we hope for, we need to work for it. We need to do our part, and this is very clear, especially in this passage. Allan Kardec, in the Spirit's book, dedicates a whole part, called part number 4, to hopes and consolations. And that's one of the most important things about Spiritism, is that it gives us hope, because it teaches us that we do have a future life, and actually, that is our real life. And everything that happens here, the most difficult thing you can imagine, is just a little teaching that we have to understand, learn from it, and move on. Because life is much bigger. And just to show you how the Spiritism can actually positively influence our ability to change and to believe and to cope, we're going to go through now question number 941 of the Spirit's book, which Allan Kardec asks the spirits. The worry over death is very perplexing to many persons. But why such worry if they have the whole future in front of them? And the spirits answered, it is wrong to have such apprehension. But what do you expect? Since early on they have been persuaded that there is a hell and a heaven, and that they will most likely go to hell, because they have been taught that whatever belongs to the realm of nature is a mortal sin for the soul. Thus, when they grow up, and if they have any reason at all, they can no longer accept such a belief and become atheist or materialist. It is thus that they are led to believe that nothing exists beyond the present life. As for those who persist in their childhood belief, they fear the eternal fire that must burn them without destroying them. But death does not inspire any fear in the righteous, because faith gives them certainty about the future. Hope beacons them with a better life, and charity, whose law they have practiced, gives them the assurance that in the world into which they will enter, they will not meet anyone whose encounter they must dread. So after reading this, we have to think about hope. First, hope, again, as we mentioned before, it is the first step towards changing, towards doing good. But we can't have hope if we believe that this is our only existence. Then hope is useless, because we know that there are many things we cannot achieve. We know that there are many things we cannot change, and then we can only hope. But if we believe in eternal life, if we believe that we will be back here again and have another chance yet to do it differently and to help someone and to change, now hope is much powerful. Hope is not only that little small thing that's in your head that you hardly believe is going to happen. Now hope is reality, because everything that you envision for the future is actually going to happen, because you are positioning yourself towards making that move. And isn't it beautiful? And this is how Spiritism is going to bring to us the fullness of hope, understanding that everything that we envision for the good, for the change, for the better, is going to happen. And we have to move on, working really hard, so we can do our part, so that everything we hope for is going to come into reality. Now, this is the connection between science that tells us clearly that hope changes us, allows us to cope better, allows us to heal better, and to positively change not only ourselves, but a lot of people around us. Now, Spiritism comes on the other side and tell you, well, there is more to our existence than this. This is not the end. We have multiple existences. And we are responsible for everything we do and everything we imagine. So if we do have hope of something really good that's going to happen, well, let me tell you, that is going to happen. Because we're all going to do our part. And we will have many existences to work on that. Dear listener, as we come to the end of our show, we want to leave you a message. First, that we do need to hope, but we do need to work for it. Hope is the beacon that is going to illuminate our ways so we can actually focus and work for the change. Secondly, we have to understand that based on the teachings by Allan Kardec, everything that we envision, our own progress and the progress of our whole society, will eventually be achieved and will eventually happen because we're all destined to perfection. We just need to work together for it, based on our multiple existences, with the help of our spiritual friends. We all can do it. Now, at the beginning of this new year, 2012, we would like to say Happy New Year to every one of you. And let's hope that we're going to be here together every Saturday discussing new topics. And I'm looking forward to be together with you again very soon. Thank you very much, and let God bless us and illuminate our ways, allowing us to continue in this pathway of progress. So be it.
Thank you for listening to Kardec Radio, broadcasting live every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Email us and share your comments at www.kardecradio.com. Until next time, we wish you many blessings.